My husband looked across the breakfast table, set his coffee down like he was signing a contract, and said, "My parents think you're holding me back, and honestly, deep down, I do too." The kitchen was quiet except for the soft tick of the wall clock. I remember the smell of burnt toast and the way the morning light hit the side of his face. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I just looked at him and said, "Okay, noted. My name is Nora Ellis Whitaker. I'm 38 years old." And that one sentence, spoken so calmly over slightly overcooked eggs, was the moment I realized my 9-year marriage had been quietly dying for a long time, and I was the last one to notice. Declan and I met 12 years ago at a used bookstore in Wicker Park. I was shelving returns, he was looking for a coffee table book on mid-century architecture to impress a client. He made some dumb joke about Frank Lloyd Wright. I laughed louder than I meant to, and somehow we ended up closing the store together, talking until the owner kicked us out. 2 years later we were married in a small garden ceremony. No kids yet, we kept saying, "when the time is right." I thought the time would come naturally. Turns out Declan had a very different timeline in his head. I've always loved quiet things, books, cardigan sweaters, Sunday afternoons with tea and rain on the windows. I'm a senior librarian at the State University and, for the last 4 years, I've been narrating audiobooks on the side. Romance, literary fiction, the occasional cozy mystery. My voice is apparently like a warm blanket, or so the reviews say. I never told Declan's family how much I actually make from it. To them, I'm just the librarian. Sweet, harmless, a little boring. Declan's world is concrete and steel and 7-figure contracts. His family's company, Whitaker Construction Group, built half the skyline in downtown Chicago. Malcolm, his father, still goes into the office every day at 71. Lillian, his mother, chairs 3 charity boards and can make "bless your heart" sound like a death threat. For years I told myself their little digs were harmless. Lillian's tight smiles when I talked about a new audiobook contract. Malcolm asking Declan, right in front of me, whether he'd ever considered someone who could help grow the brand. I laughed it off. Declan used to rub my back under the table and whisper, "Ignore them." But 6 months ago the whispers stopped. And the digs started coming from him. It was little things at first. Comments about how I never networked. How I was happy staying small. How the lake house we'd been saving for suddenly felt out of reach because I wasn't contributing enough. I'd come home from a 12-hour recording session, throat raw, paycheck bigger than his bonus that quarter. And he'd sigh and say, "Another fairy tale voiceover? Cute hobby, Nora, but when are you going to do something real?" I kept thinking if I just explained it better, if I showed him the royalty statements, he'd understand. He never asked to see them. Then came the night I forgot to move his suits from the washer to the dryer. One forgotten load. He stood in the laundry room and said, "This is exactly what my parents mean. You don't even try, you're comfortable being comfortable, and it's starting to feel like I'm the only one carrying us." I asked him what he wanted me to do. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "I want you to want more. Because right now it feels like you're the anchor, Nora, and anchors don't move ships forward." I slept in the guest room that night. And the next morning, while he was in the shower, I heard his phone buzz on the counter. The preview on the lock screen made my stomach drop. "Thanksgiving is perfect," the message from his sister Carrie read. "Everyone will be there. We can finally have the talk about Nora holding you back. I've got your back, big bro." I stood there with water running in the background, feeling the room tilt. He wasn't just venting anymore. He was planning. And the whole family was in on it. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then I've been smiling at dinner, kissing him goodbye in the mornings, and quietly preparing for war. Because if they wanted a conversation about who was really holding who back, I was going to give them one they'd never forget. I didn't cry when I read Carrie's text. I didn't throw his phone across the kitchen. I just took a screenshot, emailed it to myself, deleted the evidence from the recently deleted folder, and made coffee like it was any other Thursday. That afternoon, while Declan was at a site visit downtown, I sat at my desk in the university library, surrounded by the smell of old paper and lemon polish, and did something I swore I'd never do. I called his father. Malcolm picked up on the second ring. "Nora?" He sounded genuinely surprised. I usually only spoke when spoken to at family gatherings. Hi, Malcolm, do you have 5 minutes? For you? Always. His voice was warm the way expensive bourbon is warm, smooth until it burns. I kept it short. Declan told me you and Lillian feel I'm holding him back. I'd like to hear it from you directly, not filtered through him. Dead silence. I counted 4 heartbeats. Finally, that's a conversation better had in person. I agree, I said, but I need one honest answer right now. Do you believe I'm an anchor around your son's neck? Another pause, longer this time. Nora, he said slowly, you're a lovely woman, intelligent, kind, but Declan was raised with certain expectations. Construction isn't just a job in this family, it's a legacy. We need partners who can stand on the stage with us, not just applaud from the audience. I closed my eyes. There it was, plain as daylight. Thank you for your honesty. I told him, see you at Thanksgiving. I hung up before he could backpedal. That night I opened the bottle of wine I'd been saving for our 10th anniversary and drank exactly 1 glass. Then I called Jade Park. Jade and I met when she was a terrified freshman needing help with a research paper. Now she's one of the most sought-after forensic accountants in the Midwest. She answered with her usual dry humor, if you're calling to ask me to narrate erotica again. The answer is still no. I laughed, even though nothing was funny. I need a different kind of voice work. I said, my husband's been traveling more, and he's suddenly very concerned about my ambition level. I need to know where the money's really going. Jade didn't miss a beat. Send me everything you have, bank logins, credit card numbers, his work calendar. I'll have something by Monday. Monday came. I was in the recording booth, halfway through a second chance romance about a baker and a grumpy contractor. The irony was not lost on me. When my phone vibrated, Jade had sent a password-protected folder titled, Whitaker. Declan, personal expenses 18 Mo. I waited until I got home, locked the bedroom door, and opened it. Hotel receipts. Private club charges. Jewelry from a boutique in Naples, Florida. We've never been to Florida together. And one name that showed up over and over. Always the same day, sometimes 2 nights in a row. Brooke Harrington. 37, blonde, married to Harrison Harrington, Malcolm's college roommate and the man whose investment firm keeps half the Whitaker projects funded. They'd been careful, separate cards, cash tips, different hotels each city. But Jade is better than careful. She even pulled stills from a hotel security camera, Declan and Brooke walking through the lobby in Nashville. His hand on the small of her back like it belonged there. 16 months. 16 months of him coming home, kissing my cheek, asking about my little recordings, while he was building a whole second life with the wife of his father's best friend. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the ceiling until the numbers blurred. Then something strange happened. The tears didn't come. What came instead was this cold, crystalline clarity. Like the moment right after you drop a glass and before it hits the floor, everything slows down and you can see every shard coming. I printed everything. Made 2 copies. Put one set in a safety deposit box the next morning. Kept the second set in a plain manila folder in my tote bag. And I waited for Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving morning broke cold and bright. The kind of Chicago November day that smells like snow even when the ground is still bare. I woke up before Declan, showered, and put on the navy cashmere dress Lillian once complimented with. It's so understated. I did my makeup the way I do when I'm recording, calm. Precise strokes, nothing that screams, trying. In the mirror I looked like the same quiet Nora they'd always seen. Good, let them keep underestimating me. The drive to the Whitaker estate in Winnetka took 43 minutes. Declan talked the whole way about the new riverfront project, how Harrison Harrington was all in, and how this was going to be generational money. I nodded in all the right places. He reached over once and squeezed my knee, like he used to when we were dating. I didn't move my leg away. I just stared out the window and counted the leafless trees. The house was lit up like a magazine spread, white lights in the oaks. Wreaths on every door, the faint smell of pine and Lillian's signature roasted chestnuts drifting out to greet us. Carrie opened the door before we could knock. She hugged Declan first, then me second, and for half a second her eyes searched mine like she was trying to warn me about something. I gave her the smallest smile. She looked away. Dinner was set for 14. Malcolm at the head, Lillian at the foot, aunts and uncles and cousins filling the sides. Declan and I were placed directly across from Harrison and Brooke Harrington. Brooke wore emerald silk that matched her eyes and a smile that didn't quite reach them. She kept touching Declan's arm when she laughed at his jokes. He let her. The meal unfolded like a slow-motion car crash. Appetizers, small talk, wine poured and re-poured. I ate almost nothing. I was too busy watching the choreography, the way Malcolm's gaze lingered on Brooke, the way Lillian kept refilling Declan's glass, the way Harrison stared at his plate like it had personally offended him. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. Declan cleared his throat, set his fork down exactly the way he'd practiced, and looked around the table like a man about to accept an award. "I want to thank you all for being here," he began, voice steady, rehearsed. "Nora and I have been doing some thinking about our future, and I think it's time we're honest with each other." He turned to me, eyes soft in that fake pained way men get when they're about to ruin your life and want credit for feeling bad about it. "Nora, I love you, but I need more. We need more. I feel like I'm carrying everything alone. My parents have watched me shrink my dreams to fit yours, and I can't do it anymore." The table went perfectly still. A cousin actually stopped chewing. Declan kept going. "I'm prepared to be fair. I've had papers drawn up. The house stays with me since the down payment came from family funds, but I'll give you a generous settlement if you sign tonight. I just want us both to be free to live the lives we're meant for." He slid a leather folder across the table toward me. Inside, dissolution papers, already highlighted where I was supposed to initial. I didn't touch it. Instead, I looked at Malcolm. "Malcolm," I said quietly, "you told me on the phone I was lovely, but not enough for the Whittaker stage. Do you still feel that way?" Every head swiveled toward the head of the table. Malcolm's jaw tightened. "Nora. No, please," I said, still soft. "I'd really like to hear it again. In front of everyone." Declan started to interrupt, but Malcolm raised one hand and Declan shut up like a schoolboy. Malcolm looked at me for a long moment, then at Declan, then at Brooke. And then he did something I will never forget as long as I live. He reached into his inside jacket pocket and pulled out his own folder. Thick, official, embossed with the family crest, and laid it on the table between us. "Actually, son," he said, voice low and lethal, "I've been doing some thinking too." He opened the folder. Inside were share transfer documents dated 3 months ago, notarized, already filed with the state. Every single voting share of Whittaker Construction Group that had been earmarked for Declan had been quietly moved into a trust, with me as sole beneficiary and executor. Declan went white. "You, what?" Malcolm didn't raise his voice. He never has to. "I've known about you and Brooke for 10 months. Declan. I knew the first time you charged a suite at the Peninsula on the company card and tried to write it off as client entertainment. I knew when you started pushing Harrison to pull funding from the Riverfront project unless we gave you a bigger title. And I knew," his eyes flicked to Brooke, cold now, "that some women will sleep their way into a little higher if they think the ladder is sturdy enough." Brooke made a strangled sound. Harrison stood up so fast his chair fell backward. Malcolm kept talking, calm as Sunday morning. "I stayed quiet because I wanted to see how far you'd take it. Tonight you answered that question." He turned to me. "Nora, I transferred the shares to you because I needed to protect the company from my own son. You're the only person in this room I trust not to burn it down for ego." Declan lunged across the table. "You can't do this. That's my birthright." Malcolm finally looked at him. And there was no anger in it, only disgust. "Birthright is earned, not inherited. You just proved you're willing to sell ours for a woman who's already married to my best friend." He slid a second, thinner envelope toward Declan. "Your resignation letter, effective immediately. Security will help you pack your office tomorrow." Lillian was crying silently into her napkin. Carrie looked like she might throw up. Brooke was staring at her plate, mascara running. And me? I finally picked up Declan's leather folder, opened it, and slid it back across the table untouched. "Thank you for the generous settlement," I said, voice steady. "But I think I'll keep the house. And the company shares. And my self-respect." I stood up. The room was so quiet I could hear the grandfather clock in the foyer. "Thank you all for a lovely Thanksgiving." I said, I'll let myself out. I walked out of that dining room without looking back. Behind me I heard Declan screaming my name, Lillian sobbing, Malcolm telling him to sit down and take it like a man. I didn't flinch. I got in my car, rolled the windows down, and let the cold November air slap me awake all the way home. The drive home felt like surfacing after being underwater too long. Every streetlight looked sharper, every breath tasted cleaner. I didn't cry until I pulled into our garage that was apparently now just mine, and then I cried for exactly 4 minutes. Not the ugly, heaving kind, just quiet, stunned tears that said, so this is what rock bottom feels like. Then I wiped my face, grabbed the manila folder from the passenger seat, and walked inside. Declan didn't come home that night. I found out later he'd gone to a hotel and drunk called every cousin who would pick up, screaming that his own father had stolen his life. I turned my phone off and slept in the middle of our king bed for the first time in years. I woke up feeling lighter. The next morning, Malcolm called. Not Declan, Malcolm. Nora, he said, voice rough like he hadn't slept either. I owe you more than shares. I owe you an apology. I spent years letting Lillian and Declan treat you like a placeholder. I should have stopped it sooner. I told him the shares were enough. He laughed once, dry and sad. They're not, but they're a start. 2 days later, Harrison Harrington filed for divorce from Brooke. The same week, he pulled every dollar of funding from Whitaker's riverfront project. By the following Monday, the board, now controlled by me, voted to remove Declan as VP. I didn't even have to be in the room. Malcolm handled it. Declan was escorted out by security with one banker's box. I hired a lawyer the same afternoon. Not for revenge, for hygiene. We filed on grounds of infidelity. Declan tried to fight the prenup at first, there wasn't one. Then tried to claim the house was a gift from his parents and therefore not marital property. Malcolm testified on my behalf. The judge took one look at the share transfer documents and basically laughed Declan out of court. I kept the house, the shares, and every cent I'd earned narrating. He kept the leather folder he'd slid across the table that night. Brooke's life unraveled faster than cheap yarn. Harrison froze her accounts, sold the horses, put the Gold Coast condo on the market. Last I heard she was living in her sister's basement in Naperville, selling designer bags on the RealReal to pay legal fees. Lillian tried to reach me twice. Left long voicemails about family healing and forgiveness. I let them sit in the inbox like unread junk mail. One day she showed up at the library with a tin of homemade pecan sandies and tears in her eyes. I accepted the cookies, told her I hoped therapy was going well, and walked back to the circulation desk. She hasn't come back. Carrie texts every few months. We meet for coffee sometimes. She's the only Whitaker I still speak to. She told me Declan moved into a one-bedroom in Logan Square. Works retail at a big box hardware store. And flinches every time someone mentions legacy. I don't wish him pain. I just don't wish him anything anymore. And me? I sold the big house in Winnetka, too many echoes, and bought a small gray shingled cottage on the edge of a lake an hour north of the city. There's a screened porch where I record now. Birds in the background, wind in the trees, no traffic. My narration schedule tripled overnight. Turns out being the woman who quietly took down an entire dynasty makes for great publicity. I'm booked solid through 2027. I started a free monthly workshop at the library called Your Voice, Your Story. It's for women who've been told they talk too softly, dream too small, or love the wrong things. We sit in a circle, drink tea, and practice saying the sentences we were never allowed to say out loud. Sometimes I read them the last line I ever said to Declan in court. I'm not the anchor, I'm the whole damn ocean. And you missed the tide. Some nights I sit on my porch with a glass of wine and my 2 rescue mutts curled at my feet. And I think about that Thanksgiving table. About how they all waited for me to break, to beg, to prove I was small. Instead I just stood up and walked out with everything they said I didn't deserve. Healing isn't loud. It's not a revenge body or a glow-up montage. It's choosing, every single day, to believe your own quiet life is the masterpiece, not the rough draft. It's learning that the softest voices can still move mountains when they finally decide to speak. And if anyone ever tries to tell you you're just anything, Remember this. They're usually terrified of what happens when just becomes enough. That's my story. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. If it helped even one of you feel a little less alone tonight, then every tear I didn't cry at that table was worth it. Take care of your hearts. Loves. You deserve the whole ocean too.